Hello, scholars, and welcome to Math with Mr. A. This is the last quiz you did. And so I am just going to go over how to represent models to help us solve these problems. All right. So first you want to put your name, circle your cohort, and start. The very first thing you want to do is read and annotate. For the girls' trip to the Liberty Science Center, there are 5 adults for every 30 students. What is the ratio of adults to students? So I read it and I annotated important information. Now I want to list what ratios it's talking about, right? It's talking about adults. So there are 5 adults to 30 students. You may not have seen this before, but this question says, what is the ratio of adults to students? And these are answer choices. That means an adults is first. So that means adults will be on this side and students will be on this side. If it said students to adults, then students will be on this side and adults will be on this side. Okay? Because all of these ratios are pretty much saying adults to students, which one is correct, which one is incorrect. So now I want to create some type of representation. I'm gonna use a table. Because a table is best for comparing ratios to see if they're equivalent or not, right? I know I'm talking about adults, and I know I'm talking about students. I have 4 different options, so I'm gonna go ahead and put 5 choices, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason why I'm putting 5 is because I want to list the original ratio first. 5 adults, 30 students. So A, B, C, and D. I can look at this multiple ways. I can look at it from the form of, to get from adults to students, I multiply times 6. So whatever this is, if I multiply by 6 and I get the correct answer, then I know that's right. I can also scale to see and check my answers. So I'm going to put the ratios where it belongs. 1 to 5, 1 to 6. So as I said before, you want to make sure you can either go from left to right to see if there's a relationship, or you can scale down. So we're going to scale down and then we're going to look left to right to double check our work. Those are 2 different methods you can use. So to get from 5 to 1, you see how I arrowed? To get from a big number to a small number, I have to divide by 5. To get from 30 to 5, I divide by 6. That is not equivalent because it's not multiplied or divided by the same number on both sides. To get from 5 to 1, you divide by 5. To get from 30 to 6, you divide by 5. It's divided by 5 on both sides, so B is correct. Let's just look at the other choices. But this is not a select all situation. So once you have your answer and you know it's correct, you can go ahead and move on, right? You can double check because to get from this side to this side, you multiply times 6. And 1 times 6 is 6. So you were able to check your work using the same representation, okay? This says 5 to 1. To get from 30 to 1, you divide by 30. To get from 5 to 5, you multiply by 1. That is not equivalent. And this is 6 to 1. To get from 30 to 1, you divide by 30. And to get from 5 to 6, you do not divide by 30. So logically, that does not make sense. This says select all true statements. That means there's more than one answer. All right. So what do we have? We have four smiley faces. I'll call it smiley. We have two squares and we have six triangles. The ratio of smiley faces, excuse me, to school, smiley to squares to triangles. So we want to write down what we have and compare it to the other option. We know that there are four smiley faces, two squares, and six triangles. So we're going to compare that to these options. This says A says the ratio of triangles to squares is 2 to 6. Because 2 is first, 2 represents triangles and 6 represents squares. So for under triangles, I'm going to put 2. Under squares, I'm going to put 6. To get from 6 to 2, I divide by 3. And to get from 2 to 6, I multiply times 3. To divide and multiply by the same number is not equivalent. That is two different operations. So A is incorrect. B says the ratio of squares to smiley faces is 2 to 4. So under squares, I put 2. Under smiley faces, I put 4. So for squares, I'm going to put 2. For smiley faces, I'm going to put 4. And I'm always comparing it with the original ratio, which is there, right? Yeah, that's the same, and that's the same. So B is correct. C. C says the ratio of smiley faces to triangles is 4 to 2. So under smiley faces, I'm gonna put 4. Under triangles, I'm gonna put 2. So I'm gonna go to smiley faces and I'm gonna put 4. And I'm gonna go to triangles and I'm gonna put 2. That is not equivalent because to get from 6 to 2 is to divide by 3, and to get from 4 to 4 is to multiply times 1. So C is not correct. D. There are 3 triangles. So under triangles, I want to put 3 for every square. So under square, I know every means each, and that means 1, so I'm gonna put 1. And I'm comparing it against my original ratio. So under squares, I know to get from 2 to 1, I divide by 2. To get from 6 to 3, I divide by 2. I divided by 2 on both sides to get this answer, so D is correct. E, I want to represent that. E says there are 2 smiley faces, so under smiley faces, I need to put 2. For every square, I know each per that represents 1. So under squares, I put 1. To get from 4 to 2, because I'm comparing it against my original ratio, is to divide by 2. To get from 2 to 1, I divide by 2. Since I divided by 2 on both sides, E is correct because it is equivalent. F, there are 2 triangles, so under triangles, I want to put 2 for every smiley face. I know each per means 1. To get from 4 to 1, I divide by 4. To get from 6 to 2, I divide by 3. That is not equivalent. So my answers are B, D, and E. Let's go to the next problem. A recipe for 1 batch, yeah, I'm annotating, of cookies calls for 5 cups of flour and 2 teaspoons of vanilla, right? So I could do it 2 ways, right? I could say flour, 5 cups. And I can do teaspoons of vanilla, 2. You see that? And I can also use this to help me solve these, right? So for example, it says there are 5 teaspoons of vanilla for every 2 cups of flour. Well, that's not true because there are 5 cups of flour and there are 2 cups of vanilla. So that's false. Do you see how I'm able to use my picture to help me out? The ratio of teaspoons of vanilla to cups of flour is 5 to 2, which means 5 is going to be under teaspoons of vanilla and 2 is going to be under cups of flour. Is it 5 teaspoons of vanilla? No, that's also false. The ratio of 5 cups of flour for every 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So I need 5 cups of flour. That's correct. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla. That's correct. So C is correct. The ratio of cups of flour to teaspoons of vanilla is 2, which means under cups of flour is 2, and that's 5. Well, there's 5 cups of flour when there's 2 teaspoons of vanilla, so that is incorrect. Do you see how I was able to use a model to help me select it? Now, this says select the true statement. It did not say select all. It's a difference. Select the true statement means one answer, or the true statement. Select all means that there will be more, but I didn't put select all. Okay? Let's go here. This one is a little tough. It says the number of minutes. Now pay attention. I said minutes first. Minutes can skateboard in miles. Miles is second. Is represented by the ratio 15 to 2. Well, since minutes was first, then there are 15 minutes to 2 miles. Do you see how in this is a little confusing because a lot of people would have put 15 miles, 2 minutes, but this says the number of minutes can skateboard in miles, which means it's minutes to miles, minutes to miles. This also says to select all. Select all right? Which means there are more than one answer. All right, so 15 minutes to 2 miles. So I want to first list my information in a table, and I'm representing minutes to miles. I'm going to have to create equivalent ratios because there are bigger numbers and smaller numbers. My original ratio says there are 15 minutes and 2 miles. Let's go to A. A says he can skateboard 1 mile. So under miles, I'm gonna put 1 in 7.5 minutes. I know this is true because to get from this side to this side, you divide by 7.5. And 7.5 divided by 7.5 is 1. I also know that 2 divided by 2 and 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I know that A is correct. Now B. Malachi can skateboard 15 miles. So under miles, I'm gonna put 15 in 2 minutes. So under minutes, I'm gonna put 2. Literally, this is the opposite, which means it is not equivalent. C says Malachi can skateboard 20 miles. So under miles, I'm gonna put 20. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm reading and I'm putting it exactly where I need to put it so I don't get confused. In 150 minutes. Let's see. To get from 2 to 20, I multiply times 10. To get from 15 to 150, I multiply times 10. Yes. So since I multiply by 10 on both sides, C is correct. D. Malachi can skateboard 30 miles in 4 minutes. All right. To get from 2 to 30, I multiply times 15. 15 times 15 is not 4, so D is not correct. E. Malachi can skateboard 150 miles, so going to miles and 150 in 20 minutes. Well, I know logically that 20 divided by 7.5 is not 150. I also know that 20 times, no, 2 times 75, I can't multiply 15 times 75 to get 20. So that is incorrect. So my answers are A and B. A and C, sorry, A and C. This was a little tough, but I'm sure you understand it a little better now. Look here. So in this model, we're going to look at it in a number line, but we're also going to look at it in a table. All right. So first, whenever I see tick marks, I automatically can count the amount of tick marks. To get from this to this, right, is to divide 1, 2, 3, 4, divide 8 by 4, and that is 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Right? And to get from here, I have to also divide by 4, and that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. So that made it easy for me. Sometimes it's not as easy, so I'm going to show you how to look at it on a table as well. A mixture of orange paint contains 8 teaspoons of red paint, to 12 teaspoons of yellow paint. Okay. To make the shade of orange paint using 18 teaspoons of red, how much yellow? Use a double number line to help you. Do you see that? I was able to create my know and my find based on reading and annotating at the same time. All right. So in my table, I'm going to put red because this creates orange. You see how I titled it up here? What it creates? Red and yellow. And you want to use the ratio you know. 8 teaspoons of red and 12 teaspoons of yellow. We're trying to find how much 18 teaspoons is. 18 teaspoons of red. And you ask yourself, is there a number I can multiply 8 by to get 18? Is there a whole number I can multiply 8 to get to 18? First of all, why am I getting to 18? Well, it's because I know 18 is going to be red, and I need to go from 8 to 18 to help me get from 12 to my answer, right? So that's a no, right? Now, is there a friendly factor? Yes. A factor that goes into 8 and 18 is 2. So I want to put my friendly factor in the middle. And my friendly factor is 2. Now I know that I can get from, if I get to 2, I can get to 18. So to get from 18 to 2, I divide by 4 or multiply times 1/4. So I have to divide by 4 or multiply times 1/4. And 1/4, 12 is 3. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that tells me for every 2 red, there are 3 yellow. I also know that if I know 2, I can go to 18, which is to multiply by 9. And 3 times 9 is 27. And look, even on my chart, 18 and 27. Sometimes they don't give you the tick mark, right? I was able to determine my tick marks by seeing how many tick marks from the first tick mark to my answer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which means if I divide 8 divided by 4, I get the unit rate. And I can just keep using that unit rate to scale up. Okay. 3 movie tickets cost $36. 3 tickets equal $36. What is the cost per ticket? Okay. Show work and right answer in context. Well, I know that 3 tickets equals $36. I need to find out how much for 1 ticket. I don't know. I do know that to get from 3 to 1, I divide by 3 or multiply times 1/3. And 36 divided by 3 is 12, or 36 times 1/3 is 12. I can also look at it by saying 36 divided by 3. 3 goes into 3 one time. Pull down your shade. 3 goes into 6 two times. There is no remainder. And my answer in context is there is $12 for each ticket. So here, a plane travels at a constant speed, which means it's equivalent, and it takes 6 hours to travel 3,360 miles. So 6 hours equals 3,360 miles. Fine. This is my first find. What is the plane speed in miles per hour? So in 1 hour, and at this rate, how many miles can it travel in 10 hours? So here's what I know. I know that I'm going hours and miles. I know that 6 hours is 3,360 miles. I have to find out how much for 1. And I divide by 6 on both sides. I don't know that by memory, so I can just 3,360 divided by 6. It's this divided by this. 6 go into 33 5 times. 6 going to 36 6 times. And this is where a lot of you struggle. I'm not done. I need to still pull down the shade. 6 goes into 0 times. There is no remainders. So that tells me that in miles per hour, they're going 560 miles per hour, or mph. I did the first one. Now it says, how many miles can it travel in 10 hours? Well, I know 10 is a power of 10. So I know that if 560 times 10 is 5,600, because I just bring down that extra power of 10. So 5,600 miles per hour. Right? If it's at 11, I could literally just say, okay, this plus this, because this is for each hour. If it's at 12, I can multiply this by 2 and then add that to that. Okay? Now let's look at this. It says one batch. See how I'm reading and writing it down? Calls for 3 cups of milk. Okay. 2 frozen bananas and 1 tablespoon of chocolate syrup. Okay. Fill in the table. Well, I know one batch is 3 milks, 2 bananas, and 1 chocolate syrup. So I look at my table. When it's 3 milks, 2 bananas, I know that it's 1 chocolate syrup, and I know that that is one batch. Do you see what I did? Now, this is 3. To get from 1 to 3, I multiply by 3. So everything else I multiply by 3. Look, because 1 times 3 is 3. That's how I know that's correct. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9, which means in 3 batches, there are 9 cups. And 2 times 3 is 6. Oh, 5. Okay. How do I get from 1 to 5? Because I compare everything from my original ratio times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. So in 5 batches, I need 15 cups of milk, 10 frozen bananas, and 5 chocolate syrups and teaspoons. When it's 15, 3 times 5. Oh, so I just multiply everything times 5. 10, 5, and 5. I notice that these two are the same, right? Now let's answer these questions. How many batches? Okay, so I'm looking at batches with 15 cups of milk. So I go to milk and go to 15 cups. Oh, 5 batches. How many tablespoons? So I go to tablespoons. Of chocolate syrup is there were 5 batches. So I go to batches, 5 batches, 5 tablespoons. How many frozen bananas? So I go to frozen bananas. Oh, there were 3 batches. Frozen bananas, 3 batches, 6. All right, that's all we have today. I really hope you take your time on this because this can really help you do really well on the exam. All right, bye-bye.